Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Husky Hockey Podcast, your number one resource to remind you that I should always just stick to my guns when Andrew calls me out if I'm going to call Chrona average. I should just stick to it and say that he's average, because sure enough, what happens the next time he hits the ice against St. Cloud, he gets pulled in the Friday game.
I still think you were wrong, actually, because I think you could call that below average, actually.
That's actually true. Yeah. So I should have stuck. I should have just gone with my gut and say that he's a below average. Anyway,
he sucks. Chrona sucks.
He sucks. Because winners don't get pulled, Chrona.
That's right.
Wow. What if I hope this is somebody's first podcast and they're like, wow, that guy's something.
Coming out hot.
Yeah, right. I'm Weldie, sitting here with Andrew. Huge sweep for the Huskies. And it's I got a question for you. I wanna kind of get your thoughts. Maybe we'll get it out right out of the way. Huskies win 7-3 on Friday, 2-rip on Saturday. I thought the Huskies played solid. I thought Denver played poorly. I think this sweep, as much as I absolutely love it as a Husky fan, I think it's actually maybe a little bit more on the fact that I did not think Denver played nearly as well as they are capable of. And I think that this actually is probably going to catapult them here for the rest of the season. I want to know right off the hop, weekend as a whole, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not going to disagree too much with that, actually. Obviously, I think the Huskies played well. Played very well.
Yeah.
And we're the Huskies whisperers here. I mean, listen to last week's podcast. If you did, you'd remember that we came here saying, what are the keys to turning around some of the Huskies' fortunes here? Special teams being a big one. Gave up that first power play goal to Denver on Friday in their first chance, but after that, perfect weekend. And I thought the turning point in that game was killing off the 5-on-3.
The 5-on-3
penalty for almost the full 2 minutes. I think a minute 40 change or whatever it was.
45, I think it was.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then immediately scoring after killing that penalty to make it a 4-2 game, extending the lead from 3-2 to 4-2. So a turning point there with a big kill, and then 3 for 5 on the power play on Friday, and adding another power play goal on Saturday as well. So we've been talking about struggles on the power play. Turning those around would be a big move. 0 for 15 coming into the series.
Yep.
Need to change that around. Well, check. And we need to clean this power play up.
I should clarify 0 for their last 15. Obviously, they weren't 0 for 15 on the season. But
clearly.
Yes,
and 0 for the last 5 games, 0 for 2023, all that jazz. But no longer we're able to turn that around.
Jazz.
Penalty kill as well had been struggling, and that showed up and was able to be a key in the game. So check there. I was confident last week. My mojo, my intuition is working pretty well. I said I was pretty confident about the Huskies this weekend, and again didn't call a sweep because I don't have a spine, but this was I expected this effort from the Huskies. I would agree with you that I was, not going to say disappointed because I don't really care how well Denver wants to play their games, but I was less impressed with them certainly than from the series in Denver from a couple of months ago. They
Correct.
Certainly did not have their best weekend. Chrona did not have his best weekend, as we've mentioned. And
now, some of those were absolute lasers. I will have to say,
that's true.
Cronola's goal, Mietinen's goal. I mean, they were lasers, but overall, I mean, especially Crookshank's one. I mean, you got to have that one. Rogers, and that one you got. I don't know. Yeah, he was adequate and a little bit below adequate, obviously. And I thought it was incredibly cute that he gets pulled for Matt Davis, who who gets in, gets some playing time, and then down and Carl pulls him and in favor of the extra attacker. And I'm like, oh, you think you have a chance at coming back against our defense? This is cute. So I thought, it's like, God, poor guy. I think finally get in, and nope, you're not.
Yeah, it was, like I said, a lesser weekend.
He
for
pulled
them,
him at
but-
what, like the 6-minute mark? It felt like the 6-minute mark. Maybe
Yeah,
it
I
was
mean,
like 5, but
I didn't read it that way. I just thought, well, maybe here's a chance for us to get some extended, time with an extra attacker. I don't think he was really thinking he was going to come back. It was more like we can use this as a practice because Denver isn't often in a position to pull their goalie. So, but yeah, certainly not their best weekend. We saw for the Huskies. We'll go into each of these games more in depth, but just kind of big picture, whole weekend thoughts. Going back to the goaltending rotation, with this time flipping around with Bassi on Friday and Castor on Saturday. Interesting in that Castor gets the shutout on Saturday. Shutout by giving up a goal, a terrible goal at that. But
it was really reminiscent of one of those Rennex squeakers.
Yeah,
from
it was
his sophomore and junior year.
But a thankful early whistle there negated that. But he gets the shutout. And Bassi gives up 3. Couple of those I wasn't real impressed with either on Friday. But I thought Bassi made more key saves. We saw. We're giving the power play their due here, getting 3 goals. But also that last power play, the chance they had the second period, was not good. As it turned out, it created 2 breakaways for Denver on the shorthanded chances. Yeah. Still at 4-2, I believe, or had they gone up to 5-2 at this point? Either way, it was still.
It was 4-2 because
it was 4-3. I think it was 4-3 at that point because Edwards had scored somewhat shortly after the 4th goal for the Huskies. It was 4-3 at some point in the second, and then I think it was 5-3. I don't know if this was before or after the 5th goal for the Huskies. We have a box score here. I guess I could look at it.
Yeah, I suppose we could just look at that.
I think it was so. Mietin makes it 5-3 on the power play with about 3.5 to go. So this must have been, Devine's penalty was about a minute after that. So it was after. So it was 5-3. So still definitely a game there, and Bassi saves both of those chances on the breakaways. And he ended up making some very key saves, I thought. And I was almost, more impressed with him just because I thought the game hinged at certain points that he was able to make some key saves. Not to say Castor didn't make some clutch saves, but I just thought that the grade A chances for Denver were few and far between on Saturday. And so I guess the moral of the story there is that both goalies played well again, but seeing as that goaltending game plan has not been as predictable as it was in the first half, where it was always Castor first night, Bassi second night. We've changed it up here in the second half. Still, I thought that's notable that they were, they flip-flop positions, or nights at least, but still were able to come up big and out-goaltend their opponent. So I wanted to throw that one out there as well. Another big takeaway of the weekend, however, we have to mention Dylan Anhorn. Cost this weekend, out for the season. Now we just learned a few hours ago from Mick Hatton's reporting. Sounds like it was some freak accident during warm-ups on Saturday. He had that late hit on him on Friday, and when I saw that he was out of the lineup, kind of a late scratch, I thought that those things were connected. Perhaps that late hit on Friday had something to do with him being out. Turns out it doesn't sound like that was an issue at all. It just was something that happened in pregame warmups. Terrible freak luck. And so, Huskies have been having to deal with injuries all year, and here's another one, perhaps the biggest one now, because he's going to be definitely out for the season, and probably your best defenseman so far this year.
Yeah, he was seen after the game on crutches, without a brace, without anything. So it's just kind of interesting, and then you hear this report. So immediately my mind goes to some kind of CL tear, ACL, MCL, some type of dry land, just something catches wrong. All of a sudden your knee goes one way, and then, because that does require surgery and lengthy time and whatnot. So I guess, maybe then does he execute his 5th year? Fingers crossed, I guess, but that's something definitely to look at. I did just want to go back quickly. I was confusing the 2 shorthanded breakaways that Denver had with the 5-on-3 penalty kill. So it was the 5-on-3 penalty kill. We killed that off, and then we get the puck. Chrona rips that shot home on a really good.
And that was the
odd-man
4th
rush.
goal for St. Cloud.
And that was the 4th goal. So that's where I got those big momentum changes were crossed in my head. So
that's very understandable. Also, another topic, frequent topic, popular topic of ours over the last few weeks, Mason Sulquist's donut. It's gone.
It's gone. Perfect.
He's off the schneid.
A 2-point weekend for him.
2-point weekend, and very good.
He's on a hot streak now.
Very good in the face-off circle on Friday. The whole team was very good with face-offs. They were very good with possession, right? And again, those face-offs were so key for St. Cloud. I thought kind of under the radar stat there, but Sulquist, and he's still getting some power play time, and he was an active presence. And like I said, he's off the schneid, and I think that's good for his confidence. And that's another big key for this team going forward. That we've been talking all season about scoring depth. Jack Rogers knocking in a couple of goals, one each night, and that's obviously. You take those every chance you get. We've been complaining about Miettinen. He scores a goal. He scores a snipe from the top of the circles. So I guess that's going to be his new office. Instead of the dots, he's going to now fling it at all costs from the top of the circles, at least until he wants to change the game plan again. But
hey, as long as it actually hits the net, I'm happy. As long as it's and it doesn't ring around the boards and clears the zone.
Important. That is important. And for all the crap that we give Miettinen, he is at 20 points this season. It's not like he is, which would lead the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs, who we'll get to later. So we might be complaining about Miettinen, but that might be. Those are Cadillac problems, so to speak. It's a luxury to be able to complain about a guy with 20 points at this point in the season. So, but again, nice to see him contribute as well. Really getting contributions from all 4 lines this weekend, and the defense played well. I mean, we didn't play with Anhorn on Saturday, but we saw Reiner step up. I thought Treyball had a very good weekend, very active presence there. Usually you don't see him sort of leading offensive charges, but there were certain points that he was. So Meyer
his
had a
power
good
play assist with
really got the weekend off on the right foot.
Yeah, and not only that, but just his play where he gets the puck and he fakes the shot to lure the defender into the lane. To create a passing lane for the tip for Okabe. It's just one of those little extra head on a hat plays where you don't see quite what leads up to it. That I just want to give him a shout out for being smart with that. I got to make another correction here. I swear Sulquist got an assist on Saturday, but apparently he didn't. Apparently it was Molinar. So I was wrong on that one.
Well, he again still played. I thought a good weekend.
Still
of
played
hockey.
very well. He did. Yep. One person I was not impressed with on the defense would be Brendan Bushy again. I think it's kind of been a little bit of a tough stretch for him. Almost to the point where I thought like Brett Edwards' goal. I think right after we get up 4-2. Kind of thinking, okay, here, let's finish this, and then that was kind of a weird play between him and Bassey, that Edwards was able to kind of put it on a kind of a weird, fluky shot, but it still went in. But
it's a bad goal. Bushy kind of screened his own goalie there too. Edwards' first goal of the year. Never like giving that up. Some other guy's first of the year. But I'm sure Duluth or Denver is also saying that about being the team to give Sulquist his first goal as well. But Cranla, very good weekend. 4 points, 2 goals on Friday, 2 assists on Saturday.
NCHC forward of the week.
And my pal. I don't know if we're going to get ahead of ourselves, but he was an excellent force.
Interesting.
It was a tough choice. I don't know if we want to talk about that because Rogers was on my mind too, because I thought those goals were very important goals, and there was a lot of candidates this weekend. There wasn't a lot of guys hit the score sheet, and a lot of guys seemed to be deserving of it. So I had to think. I had to think about this one, but I am going to go with Cranwell.
Let's put a pin in that. Pin in that.
We're going all off the map here.
We're going all over. Of course we were. 2-0 win then on Saturday, where it was a little more tightly contested game. But even as that game was going on, I was just kind of watching, and I was just wondering where was this Denver team from when we played them at Magnus? Because I thought, their top line, that Denver have is just full of stars and was absolutely, I thought, amazing in Magnus. And I thought their defense was good. Barons, Bouillon, and I was really impressed with Mayhew when we played at Magnus. I thought all 3 of them were terrible, really all weekend. You had, I think it was Bouillon that was just took a couple of shots from Rosborough just before the Rogers goal in front of the net, and then Bouillon chased him like almost to the corner and let the open slot. Where we were able to score a goal. I was like, Bouillon, what are you doing there? And then Barons taking down Rosborough to create a power play chance in Saturday's game. And I'm like, Barons, how are you getting outlegged by? I mean, no offense to Rosborough and all, and he was clipping along pretty well, but. I thought that tripping call there in the third period, that kind of, I don't want to say sealed the game, but really cut 2 minutes off where obviously there was only about 5 minutes left to go in the game at that point. It's a penalty you can't take. But Mazur, I thought that, Mazur and Rizzo, and I thought that line was just off. Mazur even gets the Robbie Earl treatment, gets the embellishing call.
Yeah.
So
I was surprised by that call. Well, I guess I had to. I didn't do good enough show prep last week. Talking about that Mazur, Dornbach, Rizzo line from that Denver series in November. Remember, we discussed perhaps the best line St. Cloud's going to see this year, and certainly some other candidates like the Gophers that we've since seen, but excellent line out there, and it had been producing quite a lot. That's sort of what led some folks to label this team a one-line team, which I tried to push back on last week. I was. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
So I was quite surprised on Friday to see the starting lineup being Dornbach with not Mazer and Rizzo. And I dug into that a little bit, and turns out on December 3rd, so the second game of their series against Arizona State, is when they decided to break up that line, which on the one hand surprises me because it was such a great line. On the other hand, that's when guys like Tristan Brose ended up getting. They've been mixing it up a lot. It's a lot of times it's been Dornbach being with another line, and they'll keep Rizzo and Mazer together. And a lot of the times it was Brose that would be put on the line with Rizzo and Mazer. And in his case, 15 points in the 2 months, 6 weeks, or 6 or 7 weeks or so since that change was made. So I think that it had worked to the extent of trying to spread out their offense a little bit more by shuffling those line mates around. They're still getting power play time, like that 5-on-3 started on Friday, and all three of those guys were out there. It's like they were moving the puck around. I'm like, I don't know how Denver doesn't score on this 5-on-3. It was looking very nice right off the bat and generating some chances, but to the Huskies' credit, they were able to kill it off. But so I was unaware of the fact that they had broken that line up to the extent that they had. On Saturday, they come back and start that line back up. They reunite Dornbach with Mazer and Rizzo, which I thought was interesting. So it doesn't work for them on Friday, losing to St. Cloud, and they come back, and I don't know, maybe it's out of desperation, but they reunite that line together and they get shut out. And all three of those players, I don't know if they got a point on the weekend. I know they didn't score any goals, but very quiet, generating some chances. But I see Dornbach got one of the assists on the first power play goal on Friday. But other than that, no points for Rizzo, no points for Mazer. And so interesting game plan that Denver has utilized here, and I'm wondering what they do going forward. You had mentioned perhaps if this is going to kickstart Denver, like maybe they need a kind of a sweep here in order for them to regain focus. Like I said, been playing decent over the last month or so, but not really being challenged much. Had the sweep of Miami last weekend. They scored 7 goals on Alaska, played Lindenwood, Duluth. I mean, none of these teams really strike fear at you. So it's perhaps the fact that they were able to kind of get humbled a little bit this weekend. I'm wondering if that's going to be the motivation that they need to kick it in high gear. I hope not. But interested to see how this team responds going forward. But sticking with the Huskies, more impressed by their game plan this weekend. The fact that they're getting contributions from all 4 lines and a bunch of the defense. And the fact that this Anhorn injury obviously is not good news. But as we've talked about all year, defense is a deep position for them. Last week we talked about, God, where's Wiley been? Reiners has been stepping up, and he's been deserving time. Well, you'll likely see more of those guys on a regular basis now with Anhorn out. Chase Brand has been out as well the last couple of weeks. He's been kind of in and out of the lineup dealing with some injuries this year. So injuries has been certainly an issue for St. Cloud, as we were talking before the show. Well, the one, I guess, silver lining in that is that the injuries haven't seemingly piled up one on top of another. It seems like Lutke got injured right off the bat. First shift of the year for him? Second shift or whatever? And so he's out for a month, and then it was the Denver series. I believe he comes back. Well, the Denver series is when Kupka was out. That was the start of him being out for 3 weekends, I believe. Then it was right around there that Meyer goes out. But then those guys come back.
I think it was one of those hits shortly after. I think maybe it was the Denver series. Maybe it was the series after where Brand Part 1 was out for a little bit again.
Right.
Because this is Brand's second time on the sideline.
Yes, and so, But at least it's not like you got Ludke and Meyer and Anhorn all injured at the same time. Like we've spread them out a little bit, but we're going to be out without Anhorn for the rest of this season. So huge loss. Let's see who steps up, and excited to see who gets that chance and how they end. And also, I mean, you got Anhorn's like penalty or power play quarterbacking as well that he's got to replace. I mean, guys like Meyer and Peart likely are going to be more in that number one defense on the power play position. I trust those guys. They seem to be doing the job admirably, but it's just a bigger role and more of a spotlight there on the number one unit. So you got some opportunities for some players, and that's not a bad thing. Obviously, it's not a good thing that Anhorn is injured, but the fact that it does give these some other guys some opportunities here is also exciting too. So, very, very good weekend for the Huskies, and I want them to keep this up going into a rivalry weekend with the Bulldogs here.
So, yeah, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the two reviews for the goals that were not called. First off, obviously early whistles happen. It sucks for Denver. I mean, because that should be a goal.
Right.
And then shortly after there was a review. I didn't think that should have been a goal anyway. I could never see the puck in the net at all, despite what Gino was trying to tell me and Jim Rich. So obviously both of them I thought were fairly easy no goal calls that took an exorbitant amount of time to review. That just goes into, I don't know, like, why these are taking so long to look at. Just in general, I just don't understand.
Yeah, I understand them wanting to review that Denver goal that was blown dead early. Just there is the chance that it puck dribbled across the line prior to the whistle. You'd think that would be an easy. But I guess the fact that you have to sync up audio and video, perhaps the technology talking about St. Cloud State's sound system, perhaps anything related to that,
which
will make it a challenge.
Jason Bryant did reach out and said that because I threw out a tweet about how it sounds like some of the ad reads sound like a fire alarm chirping, and that's some of the plosives and the S's and whatnot, kind of has that ting that reverberates around the national or the concrete cathedral that we have. And so Jason kind of took that a little bit to heart and re-recorded like most of his ad reads to make sure that he gets rid of some of those S's and that so I didn't mean to kind of throw him under the bus or anything like that. I was like but happy that also they got fixed. He said that it was really annoying for him to listen to as well. So I guess I shouldn't feel too bad about it. But
so yeah, I don't know exactly what the.
I can't imagine that it's going to take that much to sync up audio and video. It should just be synced up already. You just rewind, don't you? I don't understand.
Yeah, no, I don't get it. The other review, I don't know what. I don't know what they were really reviewing. Mm-hmm. And reading Hatton's write-up, Larson seems to think that was like a no-cinch lead pipe goal. Like, it definitely went in. I have no idea what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. There was certainly no angle that I saw. I was surprised. I'm surprised that you're saying that Parrish and Rich were complaining about it. At that point, I finally gave up on them, and I muted it somewhere in the second period. It was somewhere after the jack on the spot thing, which isn't a pun on anything. Something when they return to that for like the third time, I'm like, okay, I've had it. So I muted it and I turned it on KVSC. And
were you able to get that synced up?
Yes, the video is like 25 seconds ahead, so I just kind of paused that for a little bit.
Okay.
and synced it up. So it did work.
Perfect.
It took a little bit to calibrate, but I was able to do that. And I enjoyed the KVSC team. The Blake Tyson set a high standard for me last year. And I'm not going to go ahead and say that they're quite at that level. But certainly an upgrade from the TV crew, so the KVSC guys seem to be thinking they're kind of on my side as far as that. I'm not really sure what we're looking at here. Doesn't seem like much. So yeah, I got a text from my brother who's just very, I don't even call him a St. Cloud fan, just kind of a casual hockey fan, and he's like, "Boy, these reviews are just sucking all the life out of this game, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's at this point I kind of used to it." So I wasn't really all that worked up.
Now.
At least college hockey, or at least in this league, I wasn't all that worked up about it. Maybe I just was able to, I don't know, drink another beer, because of the delay. But
what beer were you drinking?
Something like Hop Valley. I don't know. It's something that was on sale. But it's like hazy IPA. I don't know.
Is it Arizona local?
I don't think so. It was just it was like a $5 6-pack, and I stock up on those whenever they go on sale. So I'm really not that picky. As long as it says beer, I'll drink it. So
they opened up a new distillery on the east side of town.
You were telling me about this. Yeah.
So I did get some of the 1928 Prohibition bourbon that they have.
Very nice.
And I was incredibly surprised in how good it was. I was not expecting not much, but it's surprisingly smooth. So I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. So in my collection, I've got 3 Minnesota whiskeys. So I've got got Iron Street that just opened. I got Tattersall, which is incredibly good, and Brother Justice, which is also incredibly good. So who knew that we were making a name for ourselves in Minnesota in the bourbon industry? So
maybe we could hit them up for a potential sponsorship opportunity.
Hey,
who
there
knows?
you go.
I'd love to have those free samples. So
same here. So are you going to be syncing up then the KVSC guys from now on?
We'll see. I mean,
I
definitely.
think it's Alex, Brian. I know. I think they listen to the show, so you better just say yes.
It would just depend on if the audio feed will cooperate. Because I know that Tyson, those guys went on the road, so I'm assuming they're going to be broadcasting this weekend from Duluth, for instance. And you know what I feel about the Duluth announcers. Ripe opportunity to mute them in favor of KVSC. Now it's just I know that the home feed will work for me, so I'll definitely do that from now on.
You just have to keep in mind when trivia weekend is, though.
They had mentioned that too. It might be on the off weekend for the Huskies, actually.
Ooh, perfect. There we go.
Because it's sometime in February, and the Huskies have one of their last off week. Their last bye is second weekend in February. So maybe they schedule that to avoid a scheduling conflict.
Nope. It looks like it is weekend in North Dakota. 17th through the 19th.
Well, I might have to put up with the North Dakota announcers that weekend. I think one of those games is on CBS Sports Network. Well, so we're still going to be putting up with the North Dakota announcer because he announces those games as well. But yeah, I can make.
They might have like a specific sports stream too. I don't know. I'll ask. I'll ask.
Yeah,
Alex and I we've DM'd once, so I'm sure.
Yep, do some digging.
Sure, it's not weird, right? Let's hop over then. Pow. Let's get the POW. You have already dealt your hand. No, showed your cards. No, what is? I don't know. You said who you is your POW. So, if you any more about the Thrilla from Chrona?
I'll change my mind. Actually, I'll go Joe Raycamp. No, just kidding.
Judd Peterson.
Dave Paradise. Just throwing out random names here. No, I'm going.
Well, then obviously we're going Jeff Finger.
Nah, see, that's Blade. It's been there, done that. I think we've done enough finger bombing here.
I don't think we have.
So
we could always use more.
Yeah, I'll stick with Chrona. How about you?
Well, since it is the Go Huskies Woo player of the weekend, also Chrona. So just kind of his thought he was just, not only is it, because he's showed up on the score sheet, which obviously helps, but overall, all zones, every aspect, I thought he was always in the mix, and just was really big thorn overall in the side of Denver, and he was able to do that, able to always be in the mix, and yet still able to stay out of the penalty box, which kind of has been a little bit of his Achilles heel over the years, that he gets in, but he'll take an extra jab or a penalty or whatnot. So he said a lot of great choices, but Yami really stood out. Power play didn't try the move. They made their adjustments, and they were able to capitalize on it. They didn't try that half wall one timer over and over again, and that's definitely helped. Still says Denver's a one-line team. They didn't show up this weekend, so and he did also ask me if I'm going to lead off the show with Quinnipiac losing twice. We'll get to that basically on their Sherman schedule, but we'll get to that when we talk about kind of around college hockey. So, but yes, he agrees with you with Yami. So,
Great.
Go ahead.
No, the way that you're framing this, it sounds like you're not going with Chrona.
I am not going with Chrona, actually. And again, this is maybe a little bit of a cop-out, and maybe this player wouldn't feel like it's earned, because, on the score sheet, it's not the same panache, but it's a guy that I'm probably not going to put on here a lot, and we've given Chrona a lot of praise, so I am going to go with Jack Rogers.
I was going to say Mr. Rogers.
Yep.
Mr. Rogers'
neighborhood. Yep. Exactly. I bet he loves that too.
I know.
I bet.
We should pay, we should send him a sweater, like a sweater vest. Won't you be my neighbor? Give him that Tom Hanks movie DVD. It'd be good bit.
Yeah. Again, I bet he's never gotten that before.
It's possible though that he probably maybe wasn't alive when Mr. Rogers was alive. So the thing is, I'm getting old. I don't know if you're feeling this too. Like these people are quite a lot younger than us, and to have the cultural references stick, it's getting a little tricky at this point.
My wife and I were talking the other day when we were in the car, because I've had my car for a little over a year now. But I haven't really done anything with the presets on the radio, because honestly, I just really have NPR on or my CarPlay, just my podcast or the radio or the my music or the new Taylor Swift album, whatever. But so I haven't done anything with the preset. So I was going through kind of like, what are the stations again? So obviously I have KVSC, and then I have the Huskies radio channel, just in case I want to listen to them. And then I was going through some of those, and I was like, okay, 103.7 The Loon. I wonder what they're playing right now. Because I would have thought their classic rock would still kind of age up and would move. But nope, Pink Floyd was being played. And I was like, you gotta really hand it to them. Hand it to the Loon for just, I am playing rock from this area and nothing more till the end of time. Because I think that's just what they're going to do. Because I thought, considering that, 60 years old by now. 50, but still, like, it's I thought it would have aged up a little bit, at least from the '90s. But no, nope. They're committed to it. So kudos to them.
Well, that's based on one song. Like, what was the next song after that?
I don't know. I had to find more radio stations.
Because I remember, like,
To
when I was back in Minnesota, I don't know, in the last 5 years, I flipped to KQ, and they played like some Pearl Jam. It was newer than I thought. Like they mixed in some. They were into the '90s, let's say. And I remember would have been listening to them in the '90s, and they weren't playing Pearl Jam. So
sure.
But I think the classic rock sort of format is sort of, 67 to 76 is sort of your bread and butter.
That's your wheelhouse right there.
I think that's always going to be the majority of the songs. But then I do think you mix in some of the newer stuff. But anyway.
But Jack Rogers' goal on Friday, making it 3-2, getting the Huskies the lead there. I thought that was a big goal. And then obviously the game-winning goal, the first goal there on Saturday. So just overall that play and that Lions play, I thought did an excellent job. So I wanted to give them a little bit of recognition. And I felt like this is kind of the best place to do it. A guy who's has 3 goals on the season, 2 of them this weekend. So I'm going to give it to Rogers. So kudos to him on his weekend.
You bet. He was probably the number 2 choice for me. So I'm glad that he got the pow from one of us this week.
Mm-hmm. Switching over then, Huskies tied top of the standings now. Did not see this coming, but obviously pleasantly surprised. We have the tiebreaker over Denver with more regulation wins. And just looking at the rest of the schedule, or the schedules the rest of the way for both teams, who would you say has the inside track? So just to recap here, the schedule for both teams. Remaining, it's for Denver. They've got home and home against Colorado College. They have North Dakota at home, Minnesota Duluth at home. They're at Western. Another home and home against Colorado College. Now, the first home and home against Colorado College, that's at a neutral site. That's at the arena in Denver.
That's just for Denver's home game. They're still playing
Yes.
the CC game at home. So Denver's just moving their home game to Ball Arena, where the Avalanche play.
Yep.
Yeah, of those
And
matchups. Go ahead. Yeah, we should talk about St. Cloud's schedule.
So St. Cloud, remaining schedule at Minnesota Duluth, home against Miami, at North Dakota, at Omaha, home against Minnesota Duluth. Of those two, who has the inside track?
I mean, I suppose from the perspective of, St. Cloud's got 5, both teams have 5 series left, 4 of the 5 for the Huskies against teams in the bottom half of the league, whereas Denver has 3 series. Or no, because Western Michigan hopped CC. So I guess both teams have just 1 series against teams in the top half. The same. Nope. Again, this Ball Arena game kind of throws it into whack a little bit. But 5 home games and then the Ball Arena game for Denver versus 4 road games. Huskies are more road heavy. They got 4 home games left versus 6 road tilts. I think they're kind of even as far as, I don't know if there's one. I mean, CC, that's always a rival. We've got the rivalry games, the designated conference rivals. Both teams have 4 games against them. St. Cloud, Duluth, and Denver with CC. Toughest series, I'd say, for Denver is at Western Michigan. You also have the rivalry weekend with North Dakota, but Dakota's not as good this year, obviously. So I don't know. I maybe would give Denver the slight edge because they have more home games. But I don't think this is a murderer's row schedule in either case. Who would you sort of give the advantage to?
I mean, I always have to have a little bit of a caveat. Maybe not a caveat, but like I just look at Miami is, we lost to Miami. So I'm like, okay. At Omaha, I don't know what to make of this Omaha team, coming off of a sweep that they have. And they're knocking also on the doorsteps too. Just
in second place in the conference, if you ask their TV guy.
When you texted me that they said that, I was like, that's not how numbers work.
I thought it was a mistake too. I thought that he just didn't know that the St. Cloud game had gone final, and that perhaps because at that point or at beginning of the day, Omaha was 2 points behind the Huskies. So I'm thinking, okay, the 3 points for the Omaha win. St. Cloud game, he just doesn't know that game is final yet, so Omaha just hopped St. Cloud in the standings. So that's why I thought, just an honest mistake. No, he doubled down on it like 30 seconds later by going, yep, Omaha's in second place because Denver and St. Cloud are tied for first. Like, nope, that's not exactly how that happens. Although I bet who would be fine with that would be Miami, because in that logic, Miami's not in last place then. Miami would be in seventh place in that scenario if you have a tie for first. So, anyway.
Or tie anywhere above you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so, conference ties. It's weird. But, yeah.
So, I mean, and I asked you because I was hoping you'd have an answer. I don't have an answer either. I think it's just going to kind of obviously come down to, these are teams you should beat. Are you going to be able to beat them? And I just worry that somehow we're going to have a thorn in our side against North Dakota or Minnesota Duluth, or something is just going to falter for us down the stretch. And, usually I'd be a little bit more worried with Anhorn's injury. Obviously, he's played incredibly well and been a stalwart back there defensively, but I think we got the people to step up and take a spot. So it's just, a matter of just getting everything done. But I want to say that a little bit of an edge goes to St. Cloud, just because maybe I'm putting Colorado College on a little bit higher of a pedestal than I should. But, those games can be incredibly tricky with that. And at Western, Kalamazoo is obviously a tough place to play. So maybe a little bit of an edge side track here for St. Cloud, but it's not by much. So, but I'm excited to actually see this Minnesota Duluth team. And I know my Minnesota Duluth friends, and they're obviously talking about this as being kind of a train wreck season for them. Basically the big thing is they can't score goals. And they're having just a heck of a time trying to get the puck in the net, and they don't have the stalwarts there in the back that they've had in previous year to kind of clean up those 2-1 wins. So, just kind of when you're looking here at this Minnesota Duluth team, what are you kind of looking for?
Yeah, I agree with those points. I mean, they were kind of offensively strapped for goals, even when things are going well for them. But 16 points for Ben Steeves right now, leading the team. That's not a very high number. Just to put that in perspective for St. Cloud, 16 points would be 8th on the Huskies. So, yeah, and as you said, no Fanti, no Shepard, or Kaskasuo. Line of goalies that they had here, they're no longer there. And
where would 16th put them again?
I got them at 8th. Cranola, Okabe, Crookshank, Anhorn.
I've got them at 7.
I got Peart and Kupka at 17 points each.
Yeah. So obviously they would just both be at 6. So 7. I'm doing an Omaha announcer bit. There we go. Hey, we got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yes, God. Ah, that's good.
All right,
Always
it.
That will always be funny.
That was a long setup for that.
You've just sealed the deal that we're doing this bit now for a while. Anytime there's a tie in anything,
we got to call it Omaha math.
Omaha math. That's right. So yeah, goaltending wise for Duluth, yeah. So it's Stay-Skull, who does have some experience going back a couple of years here, and they brought in this transfer from Maine, Matthew Thiessen, I think is how you're pronouncing it. It's spelled the same way as I think our boy Blake Tyson. But from the games that I've watched, I believe it's pronounced Thiessen. So, who's been the better of the two goalies this year? But his numbers, Thiessen's at least kind of sub Chrona, if we're using that as a par right now. Stay-Skull's even worse. I mean, sub 900 save percentage for him. But it's been a pretty even split in the games. 14 games for Thiessen, 13 for Stay-Skull. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's splitting action. I wouldn't be surprised if the St. Cloud continues to split, or at least that is the game plan this weekend, another sort of split weekend. Or, again, maybe you start with one of them, and if they stand on their head, then they get the second start. I would almost prefer that to be the plan rather than some set in stone tandem. But it's a rivalry weekend. This is a rivalry that's really grown in the NCHC era, and it is always difficult for the Huskies to go up to Duluth. Sweep is very tough for them. I believe just once in the NCHC era that has happened, St. Cloud getting a sweep in Duluth. I do think I'm thinking more than 3 points for the Huskies this weekend. I feel a take care of business type weekend, which might not necessarily mean a sweep, but I think a majority of the points this weekend I think would be a good result for them, and that's what my intuition is sort of telling me at this point.
Sure.
It's this Duluth team, we've just been waiting for them to wake up, but it just seemingly is not really going to happen this year, or at least it's not looking so hot for them right now. And you don't want to be the team that wakes them up. And so let's hope that the Huskies can kind of show who's boss here, and especially, vaulting themselves into first place after this Denver weekend. There is that letdown possibility, but I feel like because you're playing Duluth, which is a get up for it weekend, I do think I'm not really worried about that this weekend. I would be if they were playing like a CC type team, like they did a couple of weeks ago coming off the Gopher series. But for some reason, I do find that that playing Duluth will sort of motivate this team naturally. I hope that's the case. We always look at special teams. Duluth, kind of in a similar boat for St. Cloud. Decent power play, struggling penalty kill. So again, copy and paste what we said about St. Cloud special teams last weekend. Copy and paste that for this weekend as well.
Yeah, I was actually, when I was looking at everything, I was kind of surprised how much they mirror when it comes to that power play penalty kill percentage, just kind of like Denver. Huskies took care of the power play against a penalty kill that's just subpar, and that's going to be the key here this weekend as well.
Yeah, I was surprised to know how bad Denver's power play is. 54th in the country right now at 75%. Obviously, they're going to want to clean that up if they do want to win the Penrose here. But I said thinking pretty confidently about this weekend. Do you share my enthusiasm and confidence about this weekend, or what are you feeling about this series?
Yeah, it's Duluth it's just their goal scoring, and I just they having so much trouble generating scores, and us having the defense that we have had over the course of the season. I just don't see Duluth being able to kind of generate that offense. Talking about Steve's, who has, you know, leading their team in goals. I think that he's got 12 goals here on the season. He hasn't scored a goal since December 9th against Denver. So he was held pointless up until the last game against North Dakota, when he finally tallied a secondary assist on the game-winning goal with just 2 minutes left to go. So he's kind of, for being the top goal scorer with 12 goals, he has not really been productive from the scorer sheets here as of late. Um, as far as like the conference goes as well, for Minnesota Duluth, just kind of looking at their schedule, it's, they were swept at home against Denver, and that was 2 overtime games. So that was 2 incredibly close games. They lost 4-3 and 3-2. But they were able to split against Western Michigan. They were able to split against Colorado College. And they were able to get a split against Omaha with an overtime caveat on it. But, they also got swept in Wisconsin in the early part of the season as well. So they know, I think, other than that Wisconsin series, they know how to play at home. And I think maybe that's Sandelin's able to really match up the lines and kind of play how they want to play and kind of dictate their pace. So the Huskies, really have to kind of get out of that, get out of their rhythm, play their game, and I think they're going to be able to do that. But we just need that execution, to kind of take place and take care of our business and not care too much about what Minnesota Duluth is doing, because I think if we get to start playing their type of game, I think things are going to unravel quickly, and then we're going to lose 3-1, something along those lines. I do share your sentiment here that we are going to get more than 3 points though on the weekend, and this is a series that we have to make a statement again if we're going to keep pursuing here for the top of the conference. And this is the weekend where we can't drop points. I mean, there's not a lot of places we can drop points here throughout the rest of the season, because I don't think Denver is going to drop many either. And judging by Omaha's schedule, I don't know if Omaha is going to. That Omaha series there at the second to last series of the season, that's going to be kind of a key one, which I've said all season, but for different reasons many times. I don't know. It's weird, but it's definitely going to be a intriguing matchup. But I do really like St. Cloud's chances. Now, friend of the show, Dan Jacobson, big Bulldogs fan, did ask about boat races this weekend. If St. Cloud's just going to really take it to, and I don't see that happening at all. I don't see us really putting up the power numbers, the crooked letters here. And I just don't see St. Cloud going into Duluth and putting up a 5, a 6, or 7, or anything along those lines. So I think it's going to be too
I wouldn't be shocked.
tightly. You wouldn't be shocked?
There'll be one tight one. Like I said, I think there'll be like an overtime game, an overtime result. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if there was like a 5-1 in there for the St. Cloud. Like tight one on Friday, St. Cloud boat race on Saturday. That's what I'm feeling, but I could be way off. I feel like this team has the ability, St. Cloud I'm talking about, has the ability to smell some blood here. And I think if they can sense that Duluth's vulnerable, I think they can play with them, toy with them a little bit. So
is this going to be a Jackson Castor revenge series?
That's a good point.
The Castor came in obviously when Rennick went down and last season, and Castor got swept. And in the series here. So against Minnesota Duluth, lost 5-2 and then 4-3 in overtime at St. Cloud State. So,
Right.
I guess, are we going back to the normal rotation here? We putting him on the net on Friday, you think? I think yes. I think you go back to the Friday, Saturday. But
Like I said, I don't like it that it's such a set in stone. Like you have to do it this day and this guy the next day. Go by how they're playing, and Castro coming off the shutout again, asterisked, but coming off the shutout, yeah, might as well throw him in there on Friday. And if he throws another shutout, for instance, pop him in there on Saturday as well. I wouldn't be against that. I wouldn't be against doing Bassi on Friday and Castro on Saturday as you did this last weekend against Denver either. So, I'm more of a fan of putting the guy in who is playing better rather than thinking 5 days out in advance, we're going to have this guy on this day and the other guy on this day. But it's been working, and I don't know why they'd listen to me on that. So if they want to do that, go ahead. But I would just go by who's playing better. And maybe at this point, that's Castro coming off the shutout.
Last time Huskies have scored 5 in Duluth was back in 2013.
And I believe I was at that game. Which would have been the last time that they swept them. If you remember that series, St. Cloud played terribly on Friday, but they scored the winner. It was like a half-ice dump-in. I think maybe Johnny Brodzinski, going that far back. I believe he was the guy that scored the winner on Friday. Again, it was just like a clearing attempt that got past Crandall, who St. Cloud really owned him over the years. And then on Saturday, it was a laugher on Saturday. Fun series, not a fun drive back, but that's another story.
You were close. You were very close.
Okay, was it not Brodzinski?
It was Brodzinski. McNeely was in net.
Really? Was Crandall in net the Saturday game? I almost remember heckling him that weekend.
Yes. Yep. Crandall was in net.
Okay. Well, sorry, Crandall, for crediting you for giving up the half ice dump in, but it was one of the UMD goalies. But
Friday you said played terribly. They were outshot 38-19.
Really?
But yet,
they did.
Still won on the faceoff dot, 44-27. So I don't know how you win the faceoffs but lose possession right away to give it to UND to shoot. Faringer, what a weekend he pulled. Good job. But yes, Johnny Brodzinski, obviously I don't have the highlight for the goals, but he scored 2 goals though in the third period, and it was a 4-2 win.
Oh, trust me that the winner was a Jeff Frazee special.
Gotcha. What was special then about the drive home? What happened on the drive home?
Oh,
was it
was like it's a big snowstorm.
Was it just driving home from Duluth in
no,
January?
It was like coming out of the parking lot of the hotel. Like I popped a tire, so I had to get a new tire, or maybe a tire patch or something. It was a whole process. It was a disaster actually, but it seems like every time you go up to Duluth, it's I think in the entire NCHC era, it's like they've always played this series in January. Other than like last year, I think they've moved it now, or they'll switch off who plays the last series of the year. That's always going to be against the conference rival. So last year they played the last series of the year in Duluth, which would have been early March. But for the most part, it's been I think I've been there 3 times for series, and it's always been like this last weekend in January, or the second week in January, something like that. And so it's always cold. It's always snow. It's always snowing going up there. The travel's a little hairy. So that's kind of how I think of Duluth road trips. But always a fun time up there too. I do miss it, even though I've got some not so fun stories from there. But yeah, it's a good series, good road trip. If you're making the trip, do have fun. and stay warm. I'm sure it's going to be a little nippy, but and hope for
It's all that
some
lake
good,
effect.
some good results here for the Huskies this weekend.
So switching over, did you want to recap any other games? Go right to sinkers and floaters. What do you want to do?
Well, I think we've kind of talked about as far as just the conference games. Omaha sweeping Miami, kind of them taking care of business, which is important for them. Western Michigan kind of doing a take care of business weekend. NCC sweeping the Tigers. And then we've mentioned North Dakota and in Duluth splitting, which is kind of the way that those two teams this season. No one gets off the mat with a sweep in that series.
Right.
So still North Dakota at 7th in the conference and Duluth still at 6th. And again, the separation is widening in the standings. Now it's 9 points. 9 points separate.
9 points?
Nine.
Separate Duluth and Western Michigan, who's got the fourth and final home ice spot right now. So 9-point gap, the difference of 3 games. So basically you got a 3-game lead there between home ice and, at least that's from Duluth's perspective, you got a 3-game gap to make up. And they still got a Duluth or a series with Western Michigan in Duluth coming up here. It's possible, but it's looking less and less likely, especially with North Dakota being done with Western Michigan this year, and they're 10 points behind them. So really looking like this top 4, I think, is going to be what the top 4 is going to end up. I don't know about the order necessarily, but we've mentioned this year the fact that Omaha and Western are only playing St. Cloud and Denver 1 time each is a big boon to those teams. As far as it means an easier schedule for those 2 teams. So, Colorado College, who's just 5 points out of home ice at 4th, as we mentioned, they've still got 4 games against Denver to go and a series with Omaha as well. So their schedule's pretty tough down the stretch here. Duluth, we mentioned, they've got a Denver series and then 2 with St. Cloud. North Dakota's got a series each with Denver and St. Cloud as well. So the schedule advantage, I think, goes in favor of Omaha and Western, which I think bodes well for them hanging on to those spots. So we are finally getting some separation from the pack here. And is it we've been dogging on both Duluth, no pun intended, Duluth and North Dakota all year. Are those teams that you really want to see in the playoffs, in a playoff series?
Which again is ironic because we lost to Miami, but that's why I think I'm so concerned about the Penrose and chasing and just getting that top seed, is because I would feel so much better, even though we've lost to Miami also previously at home in the playoffs, but still I would feel better going up against Miami than going up against the Minnesota, Duluth, or North Dakota in the playoffs.
Right. Yeah.
That just sounds like a recipe for disaster for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the big prize. This would be, St. Cloud's already won the Penrose 3 times. So it wouldn't be new for them to add a 4th Penrose. But I think the biggest prize there is being able to avoid a potential sneaky first-round opponent with Duluth or North Dakota as well. So, yeah, things are getting interesting here in the NCHC. And this weekend, obviously you talked about St. Cloud and Duluth, talked about Denver and CC. That's just a single game. They're splitting up this first home and home over the next 2 weekends. So it's just the Ball Arena game this weekend, and then they'll play the CC home game next weekend just as a single game. Kind of a scheduling quirk there. But then you've also got Omaha, who's going to go to Western Michigan. Should be an interesting series. Just 2 points separate those 2 teams in the standings. And then you've got North Dakota and Miami, the toilet bowl there, 7 versus 8. And again, another chance for Dakota to wake up and one of those games is nationally televised, so maybe they can face plant in front of the CBS Sports Network watching audience. We shall see. But any comment on any of the action from the NCHC either this past weekend or upcoming?
I'm really excited to watch a little bit of that Omaha Western Michigan game. Happy that it'll be on a little bit earlier, so I'll be able to catch that at least the first period. Being in the Eastern time zone, but that's what I'm going to look at. Western Michigan still has been able to just keep popping in goals. So it's I still don't know what to make of this Omaha team, and I think this is going to be a good test for them in many ways. And yeah, I'll keep kind of an eye on that Denver, Colorado College. No interest in watching Miami and North Dakota. So, just if we want to go, the big change here for the sinkers and floaters here. I want to start out with floaters right now, and usually I don't start up this high in the pairwise, but I do want to talk about, since we are a St. Cloud State podcast, we go from 5 up to 2 there in the pairwise, just behind Minnesota. Why am I bringing that up right now? Basically, with North Dakota probably not going to be in the mix, if Minnesota and St. Cloud State are in the same tier, only one of those teams is going to go to Fargo.
Correct.
And that kind of looms how big that lost tie or that 3-on-3, if we just dump it to the corner and or just run out the remaining 30 some seconds or so of that game against Minnesota, that flips that comparison. We're talking about being in Fargo, the closer regional. Minnesota has to travel to another regional.
Or if the NCAA counted the head-to-head properly in pairwise, as I ranted about after that series. That too.
Yep, exactly. So now if something happens where we drop down to the second tier, I think that's kind of a no-brainer. That'll probably do that unless they want to go strict bracket integrity, which they have done in the past. Who knows? But that's just, for me looking at the pairwise, just kind of thinking, Fargo, do we want Fargo? Considering last time when we played AIC there, it was a very unreliable rink. It had bad ice. It was, maybe that's something we don't want to go. Maybe we want to go out east and get rid of all of the distractions of being close to home.
I think you want the dead regional. And it's interesting how the top 4 right now, Minnesota at 1, St. Cloud at 2, Penn State at 3, Quinnipiac at 4.
Rough weekend for them too. Jeez.
That's a kind of a nice tidy gift for the committee, because that's very easy work at assigning those regionals. Number 1 seed they'll protect them and keep them closest to home. So the Gophers will go to Fargo. You have to put Penn State in Allentown because they're the host. So they would go there. Quinnipiac would go to the Bridgeport regional because they're literally right next door. So they would go to Bridgeport. And so that would leave St. Cloud and Manchester, which will be the dead regional anyway. And they had good success at the dead regional in Albany a couple years ago. And I like the dead regional. I don't want to go to Fargo, even though I don't think that if Dakota doesn't make it, it'll definitely be deader than if Dakota had made it. But you're still going to have some, D-bag UND fans cheering against St. Cloud if they were to make it. So it's just like, let's go to the one that's got literally 300 people in the stands and take our chances there. I like that idea better.
Okay, sure.
But it's just interesting how it would be very easy right now. There would be no sort of the committee could do that in their sleep. It's probably not going to be that easy on selection day, but as it stands right now, and I do think there's a good chance that these 4 teams end up as the number 1 seeds. If it does end up like if Quinnipiac's a 1 seed, they're going to Bridgeport, like no matter what. And obviously with Penn State, they have to go to Allentown. They will be in Allentown no matter what their seed is. So there are some easy options here for the committee, and from St. Cloud's perspective, I would not mind going out east at all. So, but yeah, and that 1 seed, as you said, Minnesota's got a pretty sizable lead in the RPI right now over St. Cloud. Let's just looking at them. I mean, they went to 2 overtime games with Michigan this weekend. They have not lost a regulation game this year against a team outside a current tournament eligible team. Like their worst regulation loss is to number 14 Mankato right now. They have an overtime loss to Arizona State and an overtime loss to North Dakota. Both of those teams are outside the top 15, but no regulation losses to anyone outside that, which is very impressive. So their RPI edge is going to be pretty tough to beat. And
who else? And they don't play anyone. I mean, like outside of that range,
other than Wisconsin. Because at this point, with
Michigan State's at 13, Notre Dame, I guess, is at 15. I don't have their schedule right in front of me. I'm just looking at Big Ten right now. So
Minnesota's only got the Big Ten schedule left, and they play Wisconsin. That'll be their only team outside, because right now, Notre Dame at 15, 6 Big Ten teams right now are in the top 15. However, we have a Wisconsin rule alert.
Wisconsin rule.
We need like favorite. We need a sound effect. We need like cows mooing in the background or something. Because now
the guy who does the or who did the NBA Jam like voiceovers, I think you could like hire him for like $50. And I think we should do that. And we, if you guys want to donate to my Venmo, go ahead and do that. So we can get the sound effect of him just saying something like Wisconsin rule or something like that. I think that would just be hilarious. But because I agree, we need
to work on that. I don't know if we need to hire him. I can maybe, because I want cows mooing in the background for some reason. Maybe that'd be like. So I'll see if I can.
And I don't know why, but we need a beer bottle smashing too.
Could be that. There's a lot.
Maybe some spotted cow like smash. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good.
Wisconsin.
Which for those who are for the uninitiated, the Wisconsin rule was put in effect after the 2008 Wisconsin Badgers made the tournament as an at-large team and had an under 500 record. So the NCAA said after that season, you cannot be an at-large team in the field with an under 500 record. And right now, Notre Dame 11, 12, and 3, but yet sitting at 15 in the pairwise. But if the season ended today, they would not be eligible for the tournament because of their sub 500 record. And as far as I know, overtime results, that just feeds into the overall record. Overtime results are not treated differently in that overall record is how they would determine if someone is Wisconsined out or not. So it's insane, I'll say, that 6 teams out of a 7-team league are in the top 15.
Yes.
That's crazy. And how much I've said about how I'm not impressed at all with Notre Dame. The fact that they're in this conference and the conference has done so well this year. That's really that's how the Wisconsin rule, it has never been applied in the 15 years since it was instituted. There has not been an opportunity to disqualify a team because of a sub 500 record.
We've come close.
Qualifying for we've come close. We were watching it last year with Minnesota Duluth,
with the Bulldogs.
The Huskies actually were in a similar spot when the Wisconsin rule is ever going to be applied, or when it's a possibility of being applied, is when a conference has such a great season as the Big Ten is this year. Similar when the Huskies made the tournament when they finished 6th place in the 2014-2015 season. They went into the conference playoffs that year under 500, swept Omaha, and then won a game in the tournament in the Target Center at that point. And then ended up being, I believe, either the 9th or the 10th overall seed. That was the year that they beat Michigan Tech in the tournament. But they were under 500 I don't know what their pairwise position there prior to that Omaha playoff series was, but obviously they would not have been able to qualify for the tournament with that under 500 record. So they were in that position of being, a 6th place team in an 8-team league, getting in with basically a 1 game over 500 record, and they actually won a game in the NCAA tournament that year. So that's really when it's ever going to be applied, would be a year like this, and with the conference like how the Big Ten has done this year. And I do think there was a decent chance because Notre Dame does not impress me. They, like I said, they have only had 1 winning streak over 1 game this year, and that was back in October. It's been Splitsville basically every weekend for them. And, they got Wisconsin at home this weekend. They lost to them earlier this month. To finish out with at Michigan State, then hosting Ohio State, then at Michigan. I don't see this team going on like a big run. I do think it's going to be largely win 1, lose 1, maybe some ties thrown in there. But how it was this last weekend, they were able to move up. Do you know how many spots they moved up this weekend? Do you have that info? I know they were able to move.
I'm sorry, who?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame moved up 3 spots.
Moved up 3 spots with a split.
Schools, yeah.
With a split at Penn State. Obviously, Penn State's pretty good. It's right. They're 3rd in the pairwise. So, but a split losing Saturday will still have you go up 3 spots. So they're in that league where every team you play in that conference, the pairwise thinks is very, very good. So because of that, they're going to have the number one. They're going to have the toughest schedule in the country, according to computers, and that's really what's helping them right now. And the fact that they're able to at least split weekends. I mean, I said it's not impressive that they haven't had a winning streak here, but on the other hand, they haven't had a big losing streak either. But they've been able to tread water. They are the 1 game below 500 right now, and it's interesting. So I think we got a decent chance here that this is going to come into effect come Selection Sunday. So maybe we'll keep you updated on the Wisconsin rule alert here in the next few weeks.
That in 2015, St. Cloud at the beginning of March was at 17 in the pairwise.
Okay.
And then just before the Omaha series, they were at 16, and they were 16, 17, and 1.
Yeah, so probably was not a possibility for them to be in the top 15 with an under 500 record. Like the fact that they won those games is what vaulted them into position. So and then yeah, so then we ended up 12th, finishing at 19, 18, and 1. Okay.
Michigan Tech was 7th.
I knew that. I just thought they were 7-10, but obviously some years they just don't go by strict bracket integrity, so that makes sense.
That year was Minnesota State was the top pairwise.
That's right.
And it went straight 1 through 15, and then the Atlantic Hockey Championship was RIT,
who then beat Mankato.
Who beat Mankato in one of the most bonkers games, I think, in any. Was that it? Was that at Mariucci? Now I can't remember.
It was at Notre Dame. Speak of the devil.
Was that? Was it?
It was like got the only on-campus regional in like the last 15 years. It was because Notre Dame was the only one to bid. Remember that was the big talking point. Like you just got to put in a bid. At least Notre Dame didn't make the tournament that year. But it was at their campus facility.
That's right. Why am I thinking?
That RIT win sort of paved the way for Omaha to make their Frozen Four, which is just a cheesy Frozen Four appearance, if you ask me. Beating Harvard and then RIT.
Every once in a while.
Not all Frozen Fours are created equal.
Well, you had Bemidji's Frozen Four in there too.
At least they beat, like I think Notre Dame. God, we keep bringing them up, but I think Notre Dame was the one seed that they beat. Yeah. Yes. Or hosts regionals that they don't qualify for. So.
Yeah. Speaking of RIT, they jumped 5 spots up to 17.
Yeah.
After their weekend, and but kind of the big one that I want to talk about maybe a little bit is Cornell, who was really on the bubble sitting at 14 going into the week. You know, escaped the week here, jumping up 4 spots to 10th in the pairwise. With I talked a little bit about Quinnipiac dropping. Cornell 4-0 over Quinnipiac, and Quinnipiac followed that up with just an egg against Colgate, who is not very good. So, with the Charbon schedule that Quinnipiac has the rest of the way, facing just god awful competition, dropping two like they have when they've looked like they're just rolling throughout the season. Obviously, not in danger of them dropping the tournament spot or anything like that, but maybe some cracks there in the armor for Quinnipiac.
That's right. Now they have Harvard next week, and Harvard's decent. They would be a tournament team right now. They play them at Harvard February 3rd, and then they're playing this weekend. They're playing their Connecticut in-state tournament, which they're actually hosting at Quinnipiac's facility, which is interesting. I believe last year was the first year they did it, and I thought that was at a neutral site, Bridgeport, I believe, which is where they're hosting a regional this year. I'm wondering if they want to continue this tournament, maybe it's going to be a roving, it goes from school to host it, which would kind of be cool, but at least this year Quinnipiac is hosting it. And
an all-state team tournament. What an idea. Huh.
Makes it easy for Quinnipiac because they only have 4 teams, so that just makes it nice and easy with the math. In Minnesota, you got a few extra teams in there, so it's tougher to make a weekend tournament out of it, I suppose. But there is a chance. They're playing Sacred Heart on Friday. Quinnipiac is, but if UConn is able to handle Yale, which I know UConn's been struggling, but their struggles are nothing like Yale's season-long struggles. And if Quinnipiac handles Sacred Heart, then Quinnipiac would play UConn, which is not a terrible opponent either. So they got 2 games, I would say. Two opponents of their last 10 or so are decent. The rest are not good. But I'm actually surprised with that Colgate loss that they didn't drop even further. But I guess being 17-1-3 or whatever it was coming into the weekend built you some equity, I suppose. So, yeah, hanging on at 4.
Right after that, it's Denver, who got swept. And then BU, who kind of just has been steadily making the climb.
They've been impressive. But, I mean, scoring bunches of goals.
Maybe not making the climb here, but they've been incredibly consistent.
Scoring a lot of goals. They are now 1-1 this season in 9-6 games.
Oh, there we go.
They beat Maine 9-6 on Saturday, and that makes up for their 9-6 loss earlier this year to BC. It was very strange.
Looking historically at the pairwise here for BU, starting on December 5th, 7th, 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 8th, 7th, and now here this week they were able to move up to 6th. So incredibly consistent, just kind of hanging around in that spot.
And with Notre Dame's rise, and because of that, UConn, who we've talked about their struggles, Merrimack officially now with their getting swept versus Northeastern out of the top 15, continuing their long. I mean, they were at 6, I believe, is where I think they were at 3rd actually. Probably was their high water mark, like in early December, I'm going to say. Now down to 18, which means that BU, the only Hockey East team right now in the top 15, which, again, conference that early in the season looked like they were doing very well. Just the one team right now would be would qualify. So I would expect some other, at least one Hockey East team to replace one or more of these Big Ten teams. Michigan State, Notre Dame, as we've mentioned. You still got a clump of teams in the possibility there. UConn, Merrimack, Providence. Lowell is kind of rebounded after that Anchorage sweep. Northeastern's been playing really well of late after they really dug themselves a hole. And actually, Northeastern at 24th in pairwise is number 1 in the Hockey East standings, which is weird. So there is definitely a slew of teams within close range. But as of this point, just a one-team league right now. It's just interesting how that narrative is completely flipped just in the course of a few months.
Merrimack at Christmas was 3rd in the pairwise.
Yeah, it's I think just one win in the last 8 games, something like that, which is bad enough.
They are my top sinker where they dropped 7 spots this week.
Wow. I mean, the losses themselves are troubling, but what's more troubling is these results: 6-1, 6-2, 8-3, 5-1. There was a couple of tight. Just lost 1-0 this last Saturday to Northeastern, but a lot of these games they're not coming close. They're kind of getting their ass kicked. So not boding well for Merrimack, who's got Vermont this weekend. Vermont's not good, but Vermont gave BC a run for their money this weekend too. So certainly not a pushover. We'll see if they can right the ship.
A couple others that dropped. Providence dropped a few spots. They were hitting the bubble at 16 last week. They're down to 20th now, dropping 4. BC dropped 6 spots over the weekend. So it's, that's kind of what we're looking at for sinkers and floaters here throughout college hockey, and what we're looking at as the tournament pictures kind of starting to get maybe a little bit clearer in some spots, a little bit murkier in others. So it's going to be a lot of fun kind of seeing what's going to happen with some of these Connecticut's, RITs. Will we get the Wisconsin rule for Notre Dame? So, looking up here, like you said, at the Big Ten, we got Minnesota at 1, Penn State at 3, Ohio State at 7, Michigan at 8. Those 4 to me are locks. Can't imagine Michigan or Ohio State dropping that much. It's like you said, especially the conference.
Right.
Michigan State sitting at 13, Notre Dame at 15, with Notre Dame, kind of on the fringe there in wins and losses. Again, I keep going back to Michigan State. In our prediction show a few weeks ago, I did say that I think they were going to make it and squeak in. I'm feeling less confident about that now. I don't think they have got the wins left in there. So if I put the over under right now, 4.5 for Big Ten teams in the tournament, are you going over or under?
I'll go under. I'll go 4.
Because you'll go 4. Because I just don't see Michigan State or Notre Dame winning the tournament. I definitely don't see Wisconsin doing anything. So
yeah. So Michigan State's got Minnesota this weekend. The Gophers, and that's at Minnesota. Gophers thumped Michigan State pretty handily in East Lansing in December. I can't imagine Michigan State winning a game there. I would be curious if they get swept, how much that hurts them. Like, based on how jacked up the strength of the schedule is for Big Ten teams, I could imagine them like they lose 2 games and they drop 1 spot, something like that. Like I'd be curious to know how that hurts them. But and it'd be interesting how Wisconsin plays a role here. Like we saw them, they've been playing better of late. Saw them win a game against Ohio State this last weekend, and splitting with Notre Dame, as I mentioned, who that was a couple of weeks ago, and they've got them again at Notre Dame this weekend. They could really play the spoiler here. I mean, they've got series against Notre Dame, and Michigan State coming down the stretch here, and those will be the most important games for those teams on the bubble, because they'll need every win they can at that point. And Wisconsin's in the position where they can sink them more than losses to, say, Minnesota will. So all these teams really are going to be in battles down the stretch here. But I do think that the Notre Dame, the possibility of them not being over 500 is a decent chance of that happening. And so I'm not confident, and I'm just not confident watching them. I did watch most of their game against Penn State on Saturday, and just never come away watching them being very blown away. And watch less of Michigan State, but in a similar vein, I'm not terribly impressed with them either. So I am kind of waiting for them to fall off. What are you going above 4.5, or are you with me at 4?
Well, I just ran the customize, and obviously huge grain of salt has to be put into this because of all other games need to go.
Yeah, I wouldn't even. I don't even like doing it if you're just doing isolated games like this. It's not going to come out accurate at all. Like,
it's not going to come out accurate, but I mean, seeing them drop to 17th, I think is interesting if Minnesota sweeps the series.
We'll see if that's the case when all the other results are in too, though. Like I don't trust that just going isolated like that. But it's they should
next
drop.
Week, friends.
Yeah, they should drop. They're not going to rise like that. That's when you know the pairwise and the RPI's got some fixing to do. Like Michigan State gets swept, but they're up to 12.
They're up to 12. So, but all right, let's.
And you did. I just wanted to mention too. You mentioned RIT, which at 17, it is another rarity. It's not as rare as the Wisconsin rule, but it is the rare occasion that an Atlantic hockey team can not be the 16th seed in the tournament. It's possible. If they, with playing in Atlantic hockey though, any loss to those teams is going to affect you negatively. It's going to drop you more than if Michigan State loses to the Gophers, let's say. If RIT loses a game to Bentley, that's going to be worse for them. But if they run the table or come close to it, this could be a 2013 Niagara situation or a 2017 Air Force situation. Air Force was a 3 seed that year, which I think Niagara might have been 2. So there's been a couple of times where Atlantic hockey has had not 4th seeds in the tournament. And it's interesting. 17 and 6 right now for RIT. It's had a very good season this year, but obviously being in Atlantic hockey, there's always going to be skeptics, and we'll see if they make that interesting, because it's always like when we're trying to do tournament predictions or predicting the field, it's like you just put the Atlantic team as the 16th seed playing the number 1 overall seed. Seems to be kind of a shoe-in every year. But this year, RIT might make it interesting. So I did want to mention that, because their rise into the teens here is, I think, worth noting.
I'm trying to see where their best win pairwise is. Oh, that's a terrible sentence. And just kind of seeing, and I think it might be against American International? Princeton. Okay, they beat Princeton at 35. Oh, geez, Sacred Heart at 30. Okay, we're getting warmer.
Yeah, I think, is Niagara in the 20s? Who's the second highest Atlantic hockey team?
Niagara's at 39. So Sacred Heart.
Sacred Heart, yeah. So that would be their best win this year.
And they haven't played Niagara yet, I don't think.
That's right. They play them later this year. Yeah, so, it's been a quantity rather than quality for them, but pairwise and RPI, they love wins more than anything, and so
That's true.
possible.
I do wonder. I'm just going to quickly use the customizer and just flip one of the results against Penn State and just see where that ends up.
I like this game. I'm gonna say like 15. Flip their home game.
Jeez. 12.
Really?
Yeah. I would have jumped them up to 12.
But they didn't win.
But they
Penn
did.
State. So, but yeah, it's Big Ten, man. It's supercharged this year.
All right, let's hop over to questions. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Dan Jacobson. Any boat races coming this weekend in Duluth? I don't see it. Kirby Wilcox, hashtag horny for Hobey for Anhorn. And so we can either put a pause on that, hopefully for next season, or we just go with it and say, screw it. He's been so good, it's worth it. I actually was going to bring him up too, thinking that that's probably our best chance for a Hobey hat trick.
I would have agreed.
Would be Anhorn, and so that's kind of up in flames, and I don't think Chrona is gonna have it. So
I would tend to agree with that. Maybe the top 10, when they narrow it down to the 10.
Oh yeah, possible. Yeah, probably that, but I don't think it's. There's too many stalwarts up there for it, and he doesn't have the story that LeBlanc did when he won in 2013. So
maybe he gets 4 points a game the rest of the way out. That would help. That would help. That would help his resume.
Yeah. How about these goalies, Alex Fern? How about these goalies? Yeah. I'm happy with the situation we're in, and switching over a little bit too, kind of tying into that as well. Jeffrey Wood asked about has there ever been a college hockey national champion with a 2 goalie platoon system? So kind of the same system that we have right now. So obviously our research only goes back about 20 years or so at our fingertips. Everything more than that takes a lot more internet sleuthing and trying to find box scores, and I don't know, maybe dig up newspapers, I guess is what we could do. Go to the microfilm and take a look at everything. But if I go just by games played, what jumps out to me is 2021 UMass, where you had Lindbergh and Matt Murray, and they essentially played the same number of games. Now, that was a little bit different because I think injuries kind of played a little bit of a role in that. So they didn't have like a Friday, Saturday type system. So it's not really platoon, but it went into sharing time. So I thought it would have been nice to at least bring it up. But they did essentially ride one throughout the tournament, except for Murray played in the semifinal, and then Lindbergh shut out the Huskies, and I don't want to talk about that game. But as far as kind of a platoon system, I don't know if there's another one that kind of jumps out to your mind. But the difference also with UMass is that they had that competition, the years before as well. So they've been kind of building up to that. So it wasn't a new thing that they were splitting time in the 2020-2021 season. Obviously, COVID threw a wrench in it, et cetera, et cetera. But, just what I'm trying to say is that obviously having 2 goalies as being able to step in, I think we hopefully learned our lesson with that, with Rennick going down. So I think we're in a much better position here this year, just in case something were to happen. But getting to the question at hand, any kind of team jump into your mind about a 2-goalie system? I can't really think of one, so I don't know. What do you have?
It's a good question because I've been curious about this as well. So a few months ago, I was doing some research into this and did find a couple of examples of goalie tandems for national title winning teams. It's interesting though that I've got, and we were talking about earlier in the show, it's just a struggle, and you were talking about current box scores being unavailable. Doing research for college hockey related topics can be very frustrating because there's no, college hockey stats was a nice repository for that, but that only went, I had about maybe a 20-year span of I think it was like 99 to 2021, I think is their span of where they, and if you have it sometime in that time period, you're in luck because you can find basically any box score that you want. But prior to that, or even now, like somehow like the current modern day is worse than years ago online, which is weird. But so researching stuff prior to
just don't reach out to College Hockey News or USCHO about it because they'll just say, nope, not our fault, and just move on. So it is frustrating, but so I did come across, Denver's second of their back-to-backs in 04-05. They won it in 03-04, and then that was with Adam Burkle as their main starter. If you remember, like, the only thing I really remember about that title game from that team was the 6-on-3 to end the game versus Maine that Burkle and Denver were able to stave off. So they won it that year with him as their main goalie, but then he graduated. And so in that following year, they used a tandem of Glenn Fisher and Peter Menino. And I went through their this again, I'm not perfect. I'm trying to do some looking on the fly here, knocking off some dust in my brain here to remember the specifics here. But that one was essentially, it wasn't a set. One guy's got Friday, one guy's got Saturday. But on every weekend of the regular season where they played 2 games, there was a couple of weekends they only played single games. Obviously, both goalies weren't going to get starts in a single game weekend, but every weekend that they had 2 games, they would flip-flop. It wouldn't be a set sort of, one guy's got Friday, one guy's got Saturday, but either Fisher or Menino would start either game, and they would flip-flop throughout the year. And towards the end of the year, it became more set, where it was Fisher on Friday, Menino on Saturday. That was the case throughout the WCHA playoffs, where they still rotated. It was even the case in the regional that they played. Fisher got the first game, Menino got the second game. The only time that year that they did not use the tandem was the Frozen Four, where they gave Menino both starts. And that was the all WCHA Frozen. That was the all WCHA Frozen Four.
Maybe that played a part in it. It's possible maybe Menino had great numbers against it. They played CC and North Dakota in those games. I would have to look to see how well he played against those teams, but my hunch is that they just, Gwozdecki wants to ride the hot goalie in that Frozen Four. I'm not sure, but so it's just interesting that they were riding a tandem all year and then broke it at the Frozen Four. I also looked at North Dakota's 2 national titles in 97 and 2000. Wasn't exactly a even split in the 2000 year. But this was Carl Gehring and Andy Kolar. Gehring got 30 starts or played in 30 games, Kolar 15, so like a 2-to-1 split for Gehring. But that was a year where it was a 12-team field, and higher seeds just basically got a bye in the first round. So they only played 3 games in the NCAA tournament. They only had to play 1 game in the regional to go to the Frozen Four. That regional game was started by Kolar, but then both games in the Frozen Four, Carl Gehring was the starter. And then the only one that I remember, this one I could not get box score verification for, but the 92-93 Maine team, which we've mentioned on the podcast recently, they went 42-1 that year, and a couple of ties.
They were all right.
They were all right. Paul Correa won the Hobey as a freshman.
He was all right.
They were using a goalie tandem. The game split, I think, was either 1 or 2 games off. Like, it was like 25-23 split between Mike Dunham and Garth Snow, both goalies who would go on to NHL careers. And I cannot verify how they were using goalies in the tournament. I know that the title game against Lake State, Dunham started and was pulled in the second period, or maybe even going into the third, maybe between the second and the third. But Snow replaced Dunham in the title game, and Maine ended up coming back to win. They were down 2 goals going into the third period. Do you know who scored the hat trick? Natural hat trick in the third period to win the game for Maine. Do you know who would have scored that?
Montgomery.
Very good. Current head coach of the Boston Bruins, Jim Montgomery. So, but that
also has had a pretty good season.
He did. He's had a good season, and he had a good career with Maine. I think he had almost 300 points in his career. A decent year, a decent career for him at the college level. But again, I can't verify whether Dunham was getting the previous starts in that tournament, if they were riding him, or if they were also rotating with him and Snow in the tournament as well prior to that title game. So, but during the regular season, at least, they got basically an even split of time as well. So. It has happened before. It's not completely unheard of. And I'm sure there's times before, the 80s, 70s, and back in the Stone Age where goalie tandems maybe were more common. So it's not completely unheard of, but from what's interesting to me is how, like in that Denver situation, they broke the tandem at the Frozen Four. And I'm wondering if that's a hockey-like thing, like in the playoffs, you got to ride your hot goalie. I don't know why that wouldn't apply to the regional as well. But, so Gwozdecki does the rotation in the regional, but he doesn't do it the Frozen Four. Weird, but so I can't. And,
well, I think maybe that's something where we can look back at the stats and maybe just because who did they play? You said it was CC in the semifinal, and then it was
North Dakota in the title game.
North Dakota in the title game. So I wonder, you probably had something to do with that. So Gehrig and Kolar, they split in the 2000. That was the 99-2000 season.
Yes.
Okay, because they also split in the 2000-2001. Right. Because in the final,
they didn't win the national title that year. They were the runner-up, right.
But St. Cloud,
right? Kolar got to start that game.
Kolar got to start that game. Gehrig got to start previous game. So they kept the rotation going on for the next year then as well.
And their 97 team, which I mentioned too, when I was looking at their stats, I'm going to pull them up now because they were also their goalies had an even split as well. I'm blanking on the name here. I'm trying to find it, but maybe that was a Blaze thing. Like he liked to cycle in goaltenders. That year would have been Aaron Schweitzer, who I was familiar with. That name rings a bell at least. The other one, Toby Kavelavog. I don't know. They both got 20-something games that year. That name is an interesting one. And still, like in College Hockey News, like they don't have goalie stats. They just have the number of games played. So I'm only guessing there. Maybe this other Kavolavog, if that's how you pronounce it, which I hope it's not, based on how I'm saying it. But maybe he was just, I don't know, he was thrown in there for a minute or two at a time. I obviously doubt it. But so both of those teams that won a natty did not have a set starter. Even though, like I said, Gehrig got 2 out, two games to Kolar's one, at least in that 2000 season. And it's it's interesting too. Like, where was it? It was. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, back to that Pioneers team, because we're just hopping now back and forth as we're live doing these stats. So to break up the rotation against Colorado College, which again, Sterling, Surdich, that team was so good. Earlier in that season, Friday game, Fisher starts. Denver loses 3-1. Menino starts the next game. Denver wins 6-3. Later on in the season, Denver loses 0-3 with Fisher in net. Wins 5-0 with Menino in net. So I bet that had something to do with, then we're going to go ahead and put Menino in net against Colorado College.
And I would be surprised if he was better against North Dakota that year as well. Or if it's after you win that game, he's the hot goalie, then you go with him no matter what.
I think that's what happened, because they only played 3 times. They only played North Dakota 3 times that year, and they swept North Dakota, equal 4-2 scores with each of them in net. And then the Friday game of the Final 5 was a 2-1 overtime, and
that was Fisher.
So I mean, you would think then Fisher might have a little bit of the upper hand there going up against North Dakota, but was not the case. God, I remember going to that game too, like Denver against Colorado College. Like, I don't care who wins, but these are 2 incredibly good, high-scoring teams. Like, this is going to be a fun game to watch, just as an outside fan. 1-0 Denver win. And I just remember being like, oh, this is one of the worst Final 5 title games.
Yeah, they, I said one of those weekends was a single game. They just played the first game of the year, played just a Saturday game at Minnesota, non-conference game. I'm wondering if this was the Hall of Fame game, being like a one-off like this. It's weird. But I know the Gophers, and this was at the XL Center, I know the Gophers would play, they had an icebreaker at the X in this era. Maybe they just played random games there. That was when Mankato played one of their home games against the Gophers at the X. I'm just looking at this attendance figure, 17,409 for that game at the X. The first game of the year, early October. This was the peak, 04, 05, 06, 07. This was the peak of college hockey attendance. Can you imagine what would it take for a college hockey game to draw 17,000 for the X right now? I don't think the Gophers could do it. It's insane to think of that, but
I mean, this is Gophers against Denver as well. I mean, it's not like it's a local team,
right? Yeah, so just going through these years of national champions and how they manage their goalies, it is unusual. Like, I came across the 07-08 BC team. John Muse was their starter. He played every single minute for the Eagles that year. So the opposite of the goalie tandem, there is no other goalies listed on that team, and he played 44 games as a freshman and 921 saves, and they won the national title. Nathan Gerby on that team too. That was when BC was just getting started as their second run as a kind of a dynasty. That kind of late 90s, early 2000s run, and then they won 3 national titles in 5 years or whatever it was, starting with this 08 team. So, but that one was more unusual, like to see a team literally that didn't have a backup play a minute was unusual to see too. But interesting to go down the list, to go down the history here, even though it is frustrating not being able to easily access things like box scores and whatnot. But It is interesting, that's for sure, and it's a good question.
Now that is gonna seem a little bit off the wall, but that era of Denver Pioneers goalies, that Burkle, Dubowitz, Fisher, Menino, like I don't know why, but that always like I can never keep any of those straight. Who won a championship and who didn't?
I'm better now after doing this little bit, because I thought Burkle was both years, but then I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right, because I remember Menino. I don't really remember Fisher personally. I don't know why. I would have been at games that he started, but I just that name has sort of slipped my memory at this point.
So did Dubowitz win a championship or did he not?
He would not have.
I swear he won a championship.
Fisher was a freshman for that the year before, the Burkle year. So Burkle was a senior, Fisher was a freshman. So then it was sophomore, Fisher as a sophomore and Menino as a freshman in that 04-05 year. And even that 04 Denver team, they that championship was somewhat of a surprise. They did not. That was the year that they did not make the Final Five. CC beat them in the playoffs to knock them out of the Final Five. But then they won 4 straight in the national tournament. But that was kind of a surprise. But then you're thinking, okay, well, they kind of won this surprise tournament, but now they got 2 young goalies the next year. And they might have been a better team, as it turned out, in that 04-05 year. So, that was they were, and to remember, when you're rattling off those CC players, to think of a time when CC was just elite like that. It is nostalgic.
Well, we probably rambled on long enough, huh?
Oh, yeah. I think so.
That about does her. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Husky Hockey Podcast. We'll be back next week after the Minnesota Duluth series. I'm Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR Clappers, More Clappers. Andrew, you can reach him at our email address, which is...
That's right. It's Huskies Hockey Podcast at gmail.com.
Perfect. And remember, 5-star review. Go ahead. And if you made it this far, you got to like it at least a little bit.
That's right.
So please. Thank you. All right. Until next time, go Huskies. Woo!